Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Thursday, and welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. You got a lot going on today, and what a great night we had last night. We'll get into that in a minute, but again, thank you to everybody that showed up and showed out for the Winnipeg Sports Talk group night at the ballpark. Over 100 of you joined us last night. It was an absolute pleasure to be out there, and we'll actually check in with Andrew Collier from the Goldeyes. They got a big weekend coming up with a bunch of really cool promos, beginning with their country night tonight. So we'll head back there, and hopefully the place is still standing after what was a really, really fun evening with tons of viewers and listeners. And, of course, a nice win for the Fish. So they put up a half dozen insurance runs in the eighth and got a nice win as they continued some recent hot play at home. So we will check in with Andrew at the ballpark. We're also going to get into a little bit of preseason NFL chat with former Super Bowl winning quarterback Shaun King of VSiN a little bit later on. And Kenny Wiebe is going to jump on the program as well. We'll get the latest from Wiebe's world in this offseason about what's happening in and around the National Hockey League and more. And, you know, today I was just thinking, and we always say that, you know, that day, whatever, after the Major League Baseball All-Star Game is the most dead sports day of the year. I might say that today is. We don't have a CFL game tonight. The week is going to get going tomorrow, and there's a doubleheader on Saturday. The Jays are off today as they travel back from L.A. after playing the Dodgers, ready to open up a season tomorrow, or a new series tomorrow. And, of course, the Women's World Cup, which is well underway down under, kind of be playing in the middle of the night. So, you know what we're going to do before Ken comes on today? Figured it was a great time to speak with a couple of folks from the new Winnipeg Jets season ticket holder advisory committee. And we'll do that a little later on. I have a couple folks. If you recall, last year, there was a bit of a call out to, people that were season ticket holders that wanted to work and give significant feedback throughout the year, on the packages as well as season ticket holder benefits and all of those things. And listen, there's a lot of work going on right now. I think we all want that building to be full. So we're going to talk to Brian Oleksiuk and Rena Prefontaine in a few minutes on their involvement in the committee, as well as what's going on in this offseason as, we try and get a few more butts in seats and get that atmosphere back to max levels in the arena. So I'm looking forward to that. And, of course, we'll really dive into a bunch of the hockey topics with Ken Wiebe a little bit later on. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, a big shout out and thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen every day. Of course, Coolbet, Princess Auto, Aquatech and Modern Man, Canadian Club and Manitoba Battery, Vita Health, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Nick and Nicky DQ, BP and Royal Sports, Consolidated Supply, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend, Aikens Lake, and the great taste of Little Brown Jug. Not sure that there's many generics still at the ballpark today. They might have been making a run down to Little Brown Jug because I saw a lot of those in our group last night. Let's get it going. Michael Remis joins us now. Rima, what a great time last night.
That was so much fun. We sold 90 tickets, and there were even more than that. People just bought them separately, came over and said hello. So much fun to see everyone, a lot of familiar faces, names in the chat that we've met at previous things, and a bunch of new people coming out, and a lot of people telling us, it's their first time at the ballpark in a while. We had a great spot, Section D in left field, where, we were just hanging out on the patio. You could sit in the seats, sample, good beers, good food. Weather was, even though we had the tornado warning on the way in the car, it was great. Maybe a little humid, but that's okay. But it was so much fun, and it gets me excited to do more stuff like that, and excited all the support that we have from everyone listening. It was a really cool event, and great to meet a lot of different people and have some great conversations.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it was just it was so much fun, and that's what going to the ballpark is all about. Eating, drinking, getting together with friends, and we did that on a large scale last night. Special shout out to Darren Bombing and Zach Schnitzer, who of course do great bomber coverage over on Bonfire, who popped over. Um, Definitely the and Cowboys in the chat. Cowboy was there in one of those sweet old Goldeyes hockey jerseys.
That was nice.
Thumbs up to the barbecue bowl with the generic, and thanks for the swag. And we should give a shout out to Derek Schmidt, who's certainly, we have the youngest WSTer and listener in the ballpark. Of course, we all remember when Derek had a baby last month. Well, that baby made their debut at the ballpark last night. But overall, it was great. We got to give a special shout out and congratulations to Mary Jane. Because, of course, Mary Jane's been a regular in the chat for a while, always positive and saying great things and nice things and, getting along with everyone. And we actually did not meet Mary Jane originally when she came out, but she ended up being the big winner of great Goldeyes prize pack that we got from Andrew and the team. So it was great. That was a perfect example of someone new that we hadn't met in person, and many of the usual suspects were there. I mean, Kabilis and Tico Napoli and Jet Oil Tom and Running Man. We could go down the list. And I want to thank a good friend of mine, Dom, who picked up, I think, 10 seats and brought a big crew. And a belated happy birthday to our guy, Rory, who was there with a big crew as well to take in the festivities and a night at the game. So, as I tweeted out last night, can't thank everyone else enough for the support of what we've been doing, and heard so many nice things about the show from everyone there last night. But it gets me more excited to do more of these, Remis. I mean, we've grown. We've done a couple of the sports trivia nights out at Little Brown Jug. We've now done this. I think there's a real potential to continue to grow this as we keep on building up Winnipeg Sports Talk and getting into the new season.
Yeah, shout out to One Bird who was there, who's like, hey, everyone crowd us and get a group photo. This is just a small group of the guys who were on the patio there. Pretty awesome. And shout out to Travis, who went to Dollarama, picked up some name tags and a Sharpie, and was going around and giving everyone was putting their names on their shirt. So there were a couple people,
YouTube names, which was the best part about it.
Their YouTube names. Yeah, I see Rob Pepper, who I've been playing in our DraftKings contest. I never met him in person, and I'm not a guy who's gonna maybe go up to people like, "Hey, are you this person?" But I saw the name. I said hello. I saw some other people as well. We handed out a lot of Coolbet merch, some WST merch. That was super fun. Great night and great weather, and the Goldeyes won too. We saw, I know there was hail damage in Selkirk or outside the city. The only damage to your car was outside the ballpark after that bomb from Torres. So that was on his birthday.
Yeah, whoever had that white car parked out on outside the ballpark took one right on the hood. As a few balls were flying out last night. And again, a big crew there. There's Real Deal Neil.
Yeah.
He's in front of me with the with the beer, and Tico Napoli in front, and the entire crew. And there's Travis back left, who definitely was MVP for doing something we should have thought of ourselves, but came to the rescue. And those name tags with everyone's handle from the chat really, really did add to it. But overall, just a perfect night. And as far as the weather goes, I mean, you mentioned that we're rolling in to the ballpark, and all of a sudden that the phones start going off with a tornado warning. And I mean, I knew that there was a watch, but that was a little ominous. And I mean, literally, we were so lucky because that supercell exploded just north of the city. And man, if you have seen some of the videos online, like the size of the hail, baseball, there was one that looked like a freaking grapefruit. But a ton of hail, lots of damage in certain areas. I know Beausejour, they thought that they got a touchdown. I heard that a bus was turned over and into the Fisher River area. Massive hail. So we definitely dodged a bullet, but certainly thinking about anyone that has a big cleanup to do today. And if you saw, Remis, I'm a bit of an amateur weather nerd. I mean, the satellite photos of that storm coming together and exploding. At one point, it was a supercell that had a diameter of about 275 kilometers. Luckily going east away from the city, so it did not impact the game. But that was, I can't remember a storm like that coming up even around us, never mind starting right there. So we did dodge a bullet, but it certainly made for some wild shots on X and Instagram if you were following it.
Yeah, we were kind of nervous pulling in, but again, weather was good in the city, and hopefully no one had any too crazy damage. But it was a great night. I think everyone, seeing a lot of people in the chat here today commenting. Derek says, "Great to put a face to Tristan Rivers." Was there a lot of people?
The first couple, the it couple of WST. Tristan and Candace made the appearance as always, and it was great to see them. Pretty much everyone in chat. I see Bruce there, Dan Jets fan. The crew there, of course, Phyllis and Bridget were there. It was, anyways, it was really fun. Can't thank everyone enough for coming out. And as I say, if we continue to get that sort of support and turnout, we're going to keep on having more events at other games and other establishments, shall we say, in and around.
Yeah, I'll say, if you want to keep getting notified, and maybe you don't listen every day to the podcast, which probably should, but I know not everyone does. Follow us on all the social medias, Sports Tech WPG. But I'll send out we have a mailing list, WinnipegSportsTalk.com. Scroll to the bottom and just enter your name and your email. And I send out an email for this one. I don't flood anyone's inbox, but once in a while, hey, if we're getting an event, a good way to reach people directly. So WinnipegSportsTalk.com. Scroll to the bottom, sign up for our mailing list because we hope to do more of these because we've had such great turnout. The trivia night, it's funny if you do the trivia night, and I'm always worried about, are people going to show up? People going to be there? It's like full house, amazing. This one I knew was we sold 90 tickets, and there are even more people who Derek McGoran couldn't figure out how to buy the ticket on our website, but made it there anyways, and it was great meeting him. Thomas Penner bought me a beer, and I told him I'd give him a shout out for that. Traded him a WST t-shirt for a beer. So it was a great night. I came home. I was wiped. It was hot out. I came home and fell asleep. Just sat on the couch and didn't lay down. Sat on the couch and fell asleep. So it was good.
I did the exact opposite of you. I went out for a few more hours with a few of the fellas that were there. And by the way, maybe the funniest thing that happened away from all of us.
Oh yeah,
was Michael Remis meeting one of our most loyal and longtime sponsors in Greg Hasbeek from Royal Sports, having absolutely no clue who he was because for all the amount of communications and whatnot, had never met Greg before. Yeah. So I got a play-by-play of that from my pal Rob Barnsley, who was there watching it and said the entire interaction was one of the most hilarious things that he's seen in a long time. And I'm like, yeah, only Remis.
Yeah, well, he went up. I was walking around handing out koozies. Do you know who I am? And he looked like someone who's familiar to me. And I'm like, should I? And he goes, I'm Greg Hasbeek. And I'm like, oh my God. I've texted with Greg. We've emailed. He's been a sponsor of the Royals since before we even started. And I just felt like such an asshole. And he's like, I don't think we've ever actually met in person, so maybe I shouldn't feel bad, but maybe I feel really dumb not knowing that information just because all the support that Royal has given us since, again, before we started. So that was, that I don't know.
That was hilarious. I laughed so hard when he described it to me. I said, I've known Greg for a long time. They've been with us, but that, coming out of the pandemic, that's a reality. But, it's just great. We've done a couple of these events. I'm getting Remo out into the wild a little bit more. Maybe we'll get him up in the 300s for the hockey season a few times next year. Up in the seats. But again, thanks. And, I've been with Goldeyes. We're talking maybe doing a Bombers. Obviously, Sea Bears right now, I mean, there's just going to be that one more game, but next year we'll do something like that. And it's actually an interesting tie-in from what we're going to be talking about in a few minutes with a couple folks that have donated their time over the last 10 months to the Winnipeg Jets season ticket holder advisory committee. There's a lot of work going on, with True North, with all the organizations to put butts in seats. I think it's a far more difficult job to do now than it was pre-pandemic and in the past. I think that goes without saying. So listen, if there's a little bit of inventory, we can pack some people in. Maybe we'll even do a Jet game at some point next year. But I am looking forward to having this conversation because I think most of you know, I have a background not in big J journalism or anything like that, but spent a lot of time working for a number of the teams here in Winnipeg and abroad as well with Hockey Canada and the Oilers. And I always think back to the work that needed to be done after the Jets left when I was with the Moose. And the first year was an absolute disaster. Everyone had a bad taste in their mouth about losing the hockey club. And that first year of Moose hockey was a bit of a disaster, and that the team wasn't very good, to be honest with you, even at that level. And, there's a lot of people that, I think gave the opportunity to the product the first year. And then it just wasn't hitting for them. And the work that was done behind the scenes to get people to give it another chance. I was just a kid selling tickets at the time. But we had a program called the Team Builder Program. There was a lot of well-intentioned people that believed in hockey and pro hockey and, having, an outlet throughout the brutal Winnipeg winters for people to get together. And, there's a lot of people that were very busy, very successful in their regular lives that spent a lot of time with young pup like me helping, create some connections with other people in the business community. And really helped a lot out just kind of teaching, me and some of the other younger people working there about networking. But at the end of the day, it was a passion-filled project. And, the Winnipeg Jets are one of only 2 teams in the NHL that have put together a season ticket holder advisory committee. They're the only Canadian team. The other one, might surprise you, is the Boston Bruins. But they did put out sort of a report on everything that's happened. And in a lot of ways, I think at this time of year, when I know some of you, want to support the team, but maybe have had a tough time having partners, come in with season tickets, or a couple people in your group dropped out and you don't have them right now. I think they've done some really innovative things to try to make it as inclusive as possible, give people more opportunities to be a part of a season ticket holder pack or be a member of the club. And obviously knowing that it's very difficult for most people to get to 41 games a year. So we're going to talk about that coming up in just a few minutes. And then we'll dive more into a little bit of off-season talk with Ken Wiebe coming up in about 25 minutes. Just before we get to all of this, though, Remo, as I said, there's not a lot going on today as far as the news wire or anything like that. Logan Cooley has signed with the Coyotes. Everyone thought that he had said basically that he was going back to the University of Minnesota. So Arizona's going to have another talented young player drafted very high in the draft that'll be into the mix. But Reem, the biggest sports story to me, and in some ways we can kind of tie this into the Winnipeg Jets, because we've been spending a lot of time talking about, well, what happens if Scheifele and Hellebuck are with the club? What happens at the trade deadline? How difficult a situation will that be if the team is in a playoff spot to potentially move players that might not be there next season for assets? Well, I'm not sure there's ever been a more fascinating case involving something like that than what's going on with the LA Angels right now. And we'd heard all this bluster that maybe Ohtani would be traded, certainly where the team is at in the standings, and the fact that he may very well leave. A player of that stature could almost reset, your entire minor league system and your future. The Angels have gone the absolute opposite way. Last night, a big trade getting Lopez and Giolito from the Chicago White Sox for 2 of their top 3 prospects. And the Angels have said, despite that they are out of the playoffs, that they are going all in right now, doing everything they can, I'm sure, to show Shohei Ohtani that They're committed to winning, and there will be brighter days, even if it doesn't happen this year. But my God, man, the risks that team is taking, trading their top prospects to add to a team right now that is the third team, 3 teams out of the wild card spot right now. It is going to be fascinating to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, been talking about Ohtani quite a bit. One of the greatest players like ever, hitting and pitching. The combination that he can provide and what his contract after the season. I mean, what's going to happen? Because the Angels have had him and Mike Trout for a while, and they've never done anything. They've never made it to the playoffs. And here they are, 4 games out of the wild card. And they've expanded the playoffs, 3 wild card spots. Toronto holding down that 3rd spot right now. And we thought, they're going to trade Ohtani and get a big haul. No, they went the opposite way. As you said, they get Lucas Giolito, who's a former, top prospect. He's kind of blossomed in a very good starter with Chicago. Ronaldo Lopez, he's a reliever now, and they went that way. Will they add more? I was surprised that that's where they went to, but it's the Angels saying, "Hey, you know what? We're trying to win here. We want to make the playoffs. And if they do lose Ohtani, be a big reset anyway." So. Those guys won't be able to help them for a couple of years, and Chicago got a nice haul with 2 prospects, but the Angels making a statement saying, you know what, we're going for it, and good for them because it's been a rough go for a while where you have these 2 best players doing things you've never seen, and not zero team success, but 0 playoff success. They haven't even had a chance for playoff success because they haven't been there. So I do have Giolito in 2 fantasy leagues. I'm curious how this will affect his value, but that's going to be a story as we approach the deadline. We did have another trade today. Rosario going to the Dodgers for Noah Syndergaard to the Guardians, and we'll see if the Angels make any other moves, and we'll also wait for the Jays. The Jays did make a minor move yesterday, getting a relief pitcher from Seattle again. So again, yeah, that's where we're at here with the Ohtani story.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this about the Angels and Artie Moreno, the owner. He's not cheap. He has done what it has taken to sign Mike Trout long term. Obviously, they had to spend a ton of money and had the foresight as well to get Ohtani. We all remember the Pujols deal. I mean, they have spent a ton of money at times. Anthony Rendon, but it just hasn't worked. I'll say this, and it may end up blowing up in their faces. I mean, there's a ton of risk involved with a move like this, considering what was potentially waiting for them if they moved on Ohtani. But to me, Ohtani is such a unicorn and such a franchise-changing player, Reem, that doing everything they can to make the playoffs, to win, to do something this year, I think in some way they must feel that's their only hope to keeping this guy, because if he walks out the door, which he still may, it's almost a complete franchise reset anyways, even with Mike Trout signed long term.
Yeah, so crazy what a situation they have, and what a player. I know we were talking to some people at the night yesterday, going to Toronto to see Ohtani play the Blue Jays this weekend, and done things that we haven't seen in 100 years in baseball, pitching and hitting. So try to win, and hopefully by winning you can convince him to stay.
Yeah. So anyways, it was sort of the big story over the last 12, 18 hours in baseball. And as I said, we've spent a lot of time talking about how things are going to shake out this season if the 2 players that are still on the club that were most rumored to be potentially on the move with expiring contracts in Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, what sort of situation that will put the general manager in. And I mean, the background of a season, if of course they are here, because they're still very, very productive players, maybe a little bit different than the Angels, who have always thrown around a ton of money in free agency and, have had some success in getting people to go there. It hasn't always been the blueprint for, and probably never will be the blueprint of how the Winnipeg Jets build their club. So we thought it was an interesting parallel and obviously a huge story in Major League Baseball. Well, speaking of building the club, There's building the team on the ice, and of course, there's building the team off the ice. And there's been, I think, a lot of work to do in the True North offices and with the fan base over the last couple of years, to try to curb erosion of those 13,000 season ticket holders that were there from day one, improve the experience, improve benefits, and what more. And we're going to talk to a couple of people that have devoted a lot of time to the season ticket holder advisory committee on that in just a minute. Before we do that, I got to give a shout out to Bobby B in chat. And Bobby has been one of our biggest supporters, bought a ton of WST merch. And I saw Bobby last night at the game and had a nice chat with him. And he mentioned, Reem, that his old barber, Clay the Clipper, had just retired recently. And literally on that same day, he was listening to Winnipeg Sports Talk and knew that Modern Man Barbershop was supporting us. And now Bobby B is a Modern Man guy. And that's just great to hear with the way you all support the sponsors here. But heck, Modern Man is just an unbelievable shop to go into. And it's very convenient. 8 locations in Winnipeg, including 2 new locations, one on Pembina Highway and the other on Plessy Road. And Modern Man's got you covered. I mean, haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. You can make an appointment and book your look via modernmanbarber.com and follow them on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. Well, it was hot and steamy. If you weren't at the game, you probably were going to try and find a pool somewhere. Still time to make 2023 the year you take the plunge with Aquatech, and visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. Their team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And whole home renovations start with Aquatech as well. With thousands of renos as their foundation, let them upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech's ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. I've mentioned Manitoba Battery for a long time, and the incredible service they've got there, the best prices in town. I mean, listen, summer's here, and whether you're needing a battery for a boat, a golf cart, a Sea-Doo, ATV, a camper, Manitoba Battery's got you covered. A great local company with the best prices in town, and the most convenient as well, because they'll deliver it for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. But I did get a nice tweet today, or X, from Barry Wasilek, who just said, I picked up a battery at Manitoba Battery this morning. Told him Hustler sent me. Said to say hello from the crew at Manitoba Battery. They know you well. So, again, great to see Manitoba Battery hooking up one of our listeners, and shout out to you, Barry, for supporting that. ManitobaBattery.com to make your order. Give him a call or pop by and see him like Barry did at 1026 Logan Avenue. And a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, and also the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and WST. Of course, you've had the great taste of Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club. And more people are getting into the CC and ginger pre-mixed cocktail, which is available now in 473 milliliter cans. You'll find it at the next Bomber game a week today against the BC Lions. And of course, you can pick it up at Manitoba Liquor Marts and beer vendors throughout the city. And the full family of Canadian Club products available at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right, so we're going to talk with Ken Wiebe about what's happening on the ice coming up in a few minutes. But right now, coming off the report from the first year of the Winnipeg Jets season ticket holder advisory committee, thought it'd be a great time to welcome in a few season ticket holders and Winnipeggers that have devoted time to be a part of this year, find out a little bit more about the experience, what they've learned about it, and moving forward as to, continuing to try to fill the building. So let's welcome in 2 members of the committee, Brian Oleksiuk, who's the President and Chief Strategy Officer over at Oxygen Technologies, and Rena Prefontaine, a realtor and running a big shop over at eXp Realty. All right, let's welcome a couple of very special guests in from the Winnipeg Jets season ticket member advisory council. It is a pleasure to welcome in Rena Prefontaine and Brian Oleksiuk to the show. What's up, gang? Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks, Huss.
Rena, let me talk with you. This is something I think we all know that, this is a business and there's a lot of challenges right now. And we've heard a lot about the ticket campaign, but we haven't heard a lot about the season ticket members that signed on last year to help move this forward. Tell us a little bit about getting involved with the Season Ticket Advisory Council last year.
Yeah, so the Jets, as you may know, put out a call to the season ticket members and asking for people to become advisory council members. And so I thought, what an amazing opportunity for me. I'm super passionate about the Jets. And, whenever they send out the feedback forms and that kind of stuff, I'm always kind of really quick to reply. So I'm a firm believer in the best way to help an organization is to provide them honest feedback. And so this opportunity just seemed to be a really great fit for me. And so I was super excited to be chosen out of, I think, Brian, what was there, like 6,000, 7,000 people? There was a lot of people. No, I shouldn't say that. I think it was about 700 people that applied. So, and they whittled it down to 13. So it was quite an honor to be chosen.
Well, and you know what? It's important work in the community, and this dates back to, in a lot of ways, kind of what I remember in the blueprint of building up the Moose in a really tough time after the Jets left. Brian, I'll hit you with sort of the same question. Tell us about getting involved and what you hope to bring to the council to help move our team forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Huss. When I saw the I guess the call to action from True North asking for people to sign up for this effectively for this campaign, I looked at this from two different perspectives, two different lenses. The first lens being the emotional lens, where as a Winnipeg Jet fan, as being a native Winnipegger as well, I have got to see through travels, through communication with friends across, whether it's Canada, across North America, the impact and the emotion that the Winnipeg Jets can elicit both locally as well as beyond the borders of Manitoba. And it was exciting. It was a lot of fun. And, back in 2018, when you're at the playoff game, whether it was the series versus Minnesota, Nashville, or Las Vegas, people were texting me saying, you at the game. The impact that the Jets had beyond just us as a fan base was exciting. So that was the emotional side of it. And I'm like, man, I could be part of this. I've watched this team. I've been a season ticket member since the team came back. This is really exciting. But then there's the business perspective that I also had from the invitation, and understanding that this is a business that True North is operating in, understanding that there were challenges from I would say from a corporate standpoint in getting season ticket membership, and having the experience of working on other advisory councils throughout North America. I knew from a business perspective that there might be some different ideas that I could bring to help not just focus in on the current challenges, but also some challenges that maybe they're going to be facing in the future as an organization. So I took two different lenses, the emotional and the business lens, and I tried to bring that perspective to my application and through the first 10 months of being on the advisory council.
Now, Rena, obviously heading into next season, there's a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes by the staff as well, I'm sure, as the advisory council. But take us back to when this started. We know you were selected, you wanted to get in. What was it like? What did you learn early on? And what were you and the rest of the team on the committee able to contribute as this got going over the course of this season, heading into this very important offseason?
Yeah, great question. I think that the thing that struck me first was at our very first welcome meeting is there was a member from every single department within True North Sports and Entertainment that was present in the room. They all introduced themselves. They talked about how important our roles were going to be. And I think as our meetings progressed, we really did feel that. I know myself personally, it was great to see the diversity around the room. We had, whether it was diversity in the different types of season ticket members. So, were you premium season ticket member? Maybe you were in the 300 level, maybe 200 level, maybe you were a quarter season or whatever the case is. They had a really diverse fan base. there, but they also had diverse minds. And so it was, some were volunteers within their community, some were business people, some were, entrepreneurs, whatever the case was. It was awesome to see that. I think as we worked through, it was really nice because we truly did have our voices heard by the organization. For me, that was probably the most powerful and the most impactful to begin with, was just hey, they actually care. We have opinions and they may be different than what True North has, but they were open to hearing what they were. And we truly felt valued, I think, right from the get-go.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that sort of feedback, we knew that they were polling, all of their season ticket holders at a time where, they were losing some seats, trying to find out why that was the case, what people wanted to change. And none of this, Brian, happens or succeeds if the organization doesn't listen to the people that are there. Certainly it seems that has taken place. And, it's interesting reading the report at the end of the season, the impact that the council was able to have on some of the things that happened even just last season over the course of the schedule. When you look back at last year, what would people find interesting maybe about some of the things that, in a lot of ways came from the council that ended up coming to fruition last season?
Yeah, it's so brand new council. So we all know that everything, us were talking about this before we started up, the intentionality that True North operates on with every facet of its business, whether it's hockey operations, financial, it's real estate, everything that it does is with intentionality. And the first thing that just to echo Rena's comments about that first meeting, the first person there to greet us as we walked into the boardroom was Mark Chipman. Yeah. And he gave the opening statement about what his expectations as from True North for the council really set the tone that this was not about creating some type of, a feel-good type of board that checks a box. They expected the same type of commitment from its advisory council to provide honest, clear feedback, as Rena said, that may contravene what they were expecting or what they wanted to do from a business side. They wanted that feedback to move this organization forward in a way that maybe they haven't thought about. And that's really the role of an advisory council, to provide that fan perspective. Now, when you look at a brand new council like this, you hope that within its first iteration, you can just sort of get along, have people show up and get some good content. But the ability to actually have outcomes the way that we were able to drive with True North was, I would say, unexpected and exciting for myself personally, because I don't think, Rena, I don't want to speak for yourself or any other member of the council, but we're able to accomplish a lot. And when we look back at it back in June, it was quite surprising. And as we're talking about this, some of the different things we're able to do in terms of ticket share processes for existing season ticket members. One of the problems that we have as season ticket holders is that, going back when the Jets first came back, we had these groups of people that were sharing the cost. And whether it's through financial, economic, whatever it may be, issues or challenges, people have dropped out of, or maybe just mad at the Jets because they're not winning enough for them. People have dropped out of their groups of season ticket holders. So now one of the things that we came up with right off the bat was, it was, I think the term was Tinder for season ticket members. The ability to actually go online and find somebody who would be willing to share in your season ticket allotment, who maybe feel like they're an island. They can't afford to buy 41 tickets for, not including the exhibition and playoff games, but they could get to be part of your group. These types of things, maybe thinking outside of the box, that can bring people together. And effectively, that's what you want the Winnipeg Jets to do, is to bring this community together. For myself personally, I was excited about some of the different business perspectives, or the way that True North wanted to engage the business community to get a higher level of season ticket membership subscriptions through the corporate side. Winnipeg Jets have the least or the lowest percentage of corporate ticket membership in the entire NHL by far. So how do we better engage with the corporate community? And that's some of the things that I got excited about as well.
Well, it's a great point. I mean, I heard Mark speak about that, when the entire campaign was launched. And I mean, it came back to basically a fair distribution of the drive to 13,000. When you sell the entire building out in 8 minutes and it's just people going online, obviously a lot of businesses weren't able to get seats. And I guess in some ways the benefit of some of these changes is that, there is more opportunity. And I guess speaking just from a corporate side of things, I mean, I'm sure the people at True North and obviously the folks that are doing this full time would maybe have a better rollout, at least for the purposes of us. But Rena, there are some exciting things happening at the arena. I mean, I was at the Seabears game, I don't know, a week and a half ago, and you're seeing the work that's being done on that one end of the arena. And I'm not sure how much information that even you guys have right now, but certainly from sort of a premium level of seating, if people have been looking for, some improvements to the club lounge and everything that came with club seats in the past, that work seems to be very much underway right now.
Yeah. They've told us definitely it is very much underway and will be ready obviously for the new season. But yeah, it's exciting. They are making changes to where, the old Moxie's was. It is going to be all premium, different restaurants and bars and that kind of stuff. They, it goes back to when you were talking about the corporate membership. One of the things that I know that True North has done is just reached out to small businesses as well, right? You don't have to be a big corporate that has, $20 or $30 or $40,000 to drop on season tickets. Maybe you're just a small independent business owner and you're willing to put down maybe, for 11 games. They're really doing a really good job of reaching out to various business people in the community. And it's, okay, maybe you can't afford this as an individual, but what about for your business? And maybe you can't commit to 44 games, but can you commit to 11? Would you see a value in that? And really bringing to the business community the different options that are available, I think was a huge win. I think it's super fantastic. It's something, it was kind of one of my things when I first started on the advisory council, is because I am a small business owner, right? And so I have personal season tickets. I don't use them for business purposes because I frankly am just don't want to give up a game. But I mean, I'm too much of a fan to want to give up a game, but to have that opportunity that, maybe I can purchase an additional 11 tickets, or maybe it's 22 tickets to be able to gift them to my clients, is a huge opportunity that we didn't have before. And part of that came, I believe, out of our advisory council.
Well, it is it's important. I know there's a lot of time that goes into this, and having some experience with the Team Builder program back in the Moose days, we know how important people giving up their time and that is. And Brian, I guess before we go, and obviously people can go to the Jets website and there'll be all the information on the programs and packages. And there has been some really neat changes. There's a ticket swap this year, which I know was always, important if you had that option to do it. For people that'll miss a game or two, there's options there. We know about changing to the building. New season ticket gifting packs. But at the end of it all, there is an element of bringing people together and trying to get people on board. That, you guys you're not working for the team. You're doing this because you have a passion for it. And like everyone wants this to work and wants, our team to be in the best position possible. Just before we go, give a quick message to, other fans that might have been thinking, might have been on the fence, might have, for whatever reason, not have that other person to share about maybe what's come out of this committee and what's happening right now, if people do want to consider maybe either coming on board for the first time or getting back if they'd lapsed in the last few years.
I think the one of the key things that I really want to communicate to the current season ticket fan base as well as prospective season ticket holders is that we have an opportunity, once again, 41 times plus exhibition plus playoffs, to take part in watching the best hockey players in the world play. And one of the challenges we have as Winnipeggers that I would say that makes us a bit unique is that we are a small market team. But as much as we're a small market team, we are so bloody passionate about this team as well. That creates some different perspectives. And at the, when you look at what True North is trying to do in terms of fan engagement, in terms of having different programs for university students, for expanding its season ticket capabilities with quarter packs, with half season packs, these types of things. They're trying to increase accessibility to all levels of I would say, fan, opportunities. And I think what we want as a season ticket advisory council is to let those fans and those prospective fans and those prospective season ticket holders know that there's something there for everybody. And the opportunity at the end of the day to be able to watch these players, to be engaged within this, I would say, foundational organization within this community, I just think it's such a fantastic opportunity. And don't let it slide by. Enjoy it. It's here. It's fabulous. And I'm just thankful that I get to take part in it.
Well, listen, I'm thankful that you guys are doing what you're doing and everyone else that's volunteering their time for this. I mean, I think everyone knows that, when that rink is full, it's certainly better for the operation. But as fans, I mean, everybody knows that it's a hell of a lot better when, we've got the place full just for the energy and the enjoyment of, using those tickets. But I really do commend you guys for, the commitment you guys have made. And to the entire group, I think there's been some important things that have come out of this, frankly, that were probably maybe a little bit overdue. But it's an important time for the team going forward. And I know there's a lot working on, the upcoming season. Again, folks, you can get to the Jets website. There's plenty of information there. You can get in touch with us, and we'll put you in touch with the right people. But Rena and Brian, thanks a lot for coming on. And we will look forward to seeing you at the rink coming up in September and October to get back at it for another season of Jets hockey.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Really appreciate Rena and Brian jumping on today. It was, listen, I think this is an important thing. There's a lot of work to be done in a lot of areas to, keep this thing going forward and obviously to maybe tackle some of the erosion. And I think the best people to do that are the people that are the customers. So very cool for them and everyone else that's committed with probably a significant amount of time to this. And again, it's all, at the end of the day, everybody wants the team to do well on the ice and, of course, in the stands. And certainly makes it better when the building's full. So I'm sure the Jets, that full report is there on their website. And obviously, get on over to the Jets website if you want more information on some of the things that they talked about and maybe to count yourself in for the upcoming season. Speaking of that upcoming season, Kenny Wiebe is on deck and is going to join us in just a minute. Before we do that, I have to thank our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hey, if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, got to get on down to one of 6 Vita Health Fresh Market stores, not to mention Winnipeg's largest selection of local products, too. Barbecue season's in full swing right now. Vita Health grass-fed bison and beef steaks are unbeatable on the grill. And, hey, while you're at it, you can wash those down with some Sober Carpenter beer or Zevia sodas. And they got grab-and-go lunches delivered twice a week, a perfect option if you're doing a day trip or maybe camping, hitting the beach. And this month, you get a free sapsucker drink with any Vita Market salad or wrap. Vita Health, empowering people to lead healthy lives, 6 Winnipeg locations, and online at myvita.ca. Our friends at Wallace & Wallace are busy as heck right now. You know, they're Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialists. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, they pretty much got any kind you could possibly need: vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they've got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. Guys at F Apparel are ready for fall. Are you? How's the closet looking, guys? If you need to up your menswear game, heading into the new season. Get on down to F. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. 15% discount for wedding parties. If you and the guys need to look great for the big day but want to use that suit afterwards, no better option than F Apparel with that discount. Find out more at 190 Smith Street or online. And you can also make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com. And just before we bring in Wiebe, yesterday was a perfect day to hit a Nick and Nicky DQ. Oh, was it hot? But throughout the summer, it's the best kind of blizzard season around. Of course, you got the dilly bars, Buster bars, and grab a couple racks of those for the freezer at home. But while you're at it, try all the great new summer blizzard flavors at your local Nick and Nicky DQ, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and DQ Niverville. All right, on the road, a special visit from Ken Wiebe and Wiebe's World comes to us from Nashville, Tennessee right now. Ken, what is going on? How are your travels?
Andrew, great to be with you. Always nice to get back to Nashville. First time back here since pre-pandemic, actually. Both the games last year were on a back-to-back, so was not able to make the road trip for those Jets games. So as you know, the city is booming. It is under deep construction and heavy heat, but lots of enthusiasm. They still have the signs up from the awards night and the draft, and had a chance to walk over down Broadway in front of Bridgestone to see the Pecorine statue, a nice new addition from the last time I was in town. Overall, the hockey chatter has been a little bit quiet, but certainly that could be picking up here with news of Patrice Bergeron officially retiring. But overall, it's been nice to get away, and yeah, I acted like a full tourist yesterday. Huss did the hop on, hop off bus tour, toured around the entire city. Music Row had a nice tour down there. Printers Alley, checked out. Just wanted to ensure to see if Bill Guerin's tab was still open at Tootsie's. Had one quick one on the roof yesterday, but apparently the tab was closed. So I can report with authority that the general managers from the NHL teams did close up their tabs after, as you know from being here at that time, Huss, was a pretty enjoyable week for many here.
Yeah, there were a lot of bills going back to the accounting departments of the 32 NHL clubs from Tootsie's, I can tell you that.
Met with skepticism.
And to be honest, just thinking about being on the roof of that establishment during the day in late July in Nashville is enough to melt one. Imagine probably taking the shade inside. Are you there for anything in particular? Are you there for like a TV taping of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, or a big concert, or just getting out of
touring
town
here? Yeah, as you know, my draft trip was canceled, so I was able to put the Allegiant ticket to good use here. So yeah, it was took the same road as you, Huss. It was about 3 hours and 20 minutes, Winnipeg to Fargo Airport, and Allegiant. I'd also say too, Huss, the city here, we always have loved Nashville, you and I, but the city is booming. And I have to say, my Allegiant travel experience was improved from the last time I was. It seemed like they've got a few new birds, and the planes were a lot more spacious, maybe I would say, than the last time I flew with Allegiant. So I know folks are fired up about the NFL seasons, Huss. I know that there were a lot of single game tickets going on sale today that moved pretty quickly. I know that one thing I learned yesterday that I had no idea about, the Titans will be moving out of Nissan Stadium in 2027. The ground will soon be broken on a new NFL facility here, and the folks in Nashville are pretty fired up. And the other thing they're fired up for, Huss, the Baby Blues. The Houston Oilers retros will be rocked several times by the Titans this year. I know the folks around this community are pretty excited about that as well, Huss. So before we get into the hockey,
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yes, and Hopkins, folks, they're fired up. I know I should be wearing a Vanderbilt, shirt today, but I have not purchased one yet. So I figured in a college town, I would go with the college spirit here. But before we dig in, how did the Goldeyes event go before we shift gears?
Oh, man, it was awesome. I'm still looking at the chat. Everyone kind of getting together, having their thoughts, and everyone from meeting last night. It was so much fun. I mean, much like, the end of the year party that you guys have done or our other sports trivia nights. I mean, having those opportunities for people to get together and hang out is just so fun. And I don't know if there's a better place you could do it than a Goldeyes game. I mean, we were out there. It was somewhat ominous, Ken. I mean, we were pulling into the stadium as everybody's phones blew up with a tornado warning.
Oh, right.
Which we thought, wouldn't this just be our luck? But absolutely massive storm. Luckily, started north of the city, went east, and didn't impact at all. But yeah, all the usual suspects, tons of new people as well. Just a really great turnout. Fish won as well. Everyone had a few LBJs. Everyone had something good to eat. So a smashing success, I would say, for our first foray into a group night at one of the sporting events, and certainly won't be the last.
Yeah, certainly going to try. I would have been there had I been in town, and I appreciate you sending out the invite. And I'm glad, we talk about community building all the time, both on this medium and when we're having personal chats. And it's just awesome to see the community come together for events like that. I think it's fantastic. And speaking of community too, Huss, I'm sorry, I'm usually not the one asking the questions, but I couldn't help but notice you having a little bit of time with Mark Stone during the Cup parade through Manitoba. That also included, visits with Kelly McCrimmon and Ryan Craig. And I know Brett Howden had a really fun day. It looked like the Pine Ridge folks saw some views of Stanley on several holes during the week as well. But, how was everything with Mark, and how was his day with the Stanley Cup?
It really seemed like it was awesome. I mean, I think he started off kind of in his old hood. He went to Keith Bodley Arena. He went to his old school. He went by his childhood house and surprised the people with the cup there. And
tremendous.
And listen, it was a real privilege. It was an honor, basically, to have Corey and the gang at Breezy ask me to kind of do an interview for everyone that come out for the event. And shout out to the CTO who mic'd us up, brought the camera, and we ended up being able to play it on the show as well. So it was really fun. And that cup, it's leaving, or I guess it left yesterday. Mark took it to the Children's Hospital yesterday morning, and then the cup was on its way. But it will be back because Keegan Colasar's got a day with the cup. Zach Whitecloud has got a day at the cup, and I think the Whitecloud celebration is going to be really, really cool because I do believe there's plans to do something in Brandon, in Verdun, where he played for the Oil Caps, as well as his First Nation. So the Cup will be back in Manitoba, and I'm sure Gary's got a 3 or 4 day stint with it as well at some point along there.
As you should. And excited for Gary with the book coming out later in the year as well. I know he shared a couple of nuggets on the old Twitter machine this week, but that would be a fun project to be part of as well. And yeah, I know just from being around in that first round matchup, Nate Ewell, one of the great media relations folks from the Golden Knights, was talking about, I think, coming out for part of the Tamarack to shoot some stuff on Whitecloud playing in the event next month as well. I'm not sure if that, maybe that project could be on hold because of the Stanley Cup celebrations, but I know that was something that they were talking about as well. So great to see the Cup making its way around the province. And Huss, I know you saw it personally, but I mean, just to see the impact it has on people who are at those events and functions, whether it's, future NHLers or people who are just childhood buddies, or, I just love love to see the pictures and the enthusiasm and joy that it brings people when they're in the vicinity of that Stanley Cup. And also, too, the people that helped along the way for those folks, whether it's Mark or Brett or anybody else, and Zach and Keegan. I know how much those guys appreciate the journey and the people that impacted the journey. And I love that those people are able to share. Same with Kelly McCrimmon bringing the cup to Brandon. I thought that's just absolutely awesome. I mean, this is a guy who is from Saskatchewan, but a big chunk of his life has been spent in Manitoba. And I love the fact that he wanted to share that experience with so many people here, and, good on Kelly for doing that. And, same with Ryan Craig, who is now going to become the head coach of the Henderson Silver Knights after being an assistant with the Vegas Golden Knights for such a long time here. It's just awesome to see the joy and the enthusiasm that Stanley Cup is bringing to people throughout this province. So kudos to everyone who's done it so far, and kudos in advance to, Zach and Keegan. I know those guys, it's going to be a special time for them as well when they get the cup, I think, next month here.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ken, obviously there's no big, massive new Jet stories. God knows we've talked about the futures of Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele enough, and I think we all realize that that's sort of pretty quiet right now. But you did mention the Boston Bruins. And listen, I've been guilty of this as much as anyone. Saying, hey, you know what, let's see what happens with Boston. And listen, logically, they're going to have a big hole if they're looking for a guy that can put up some points. Certainly not Patrice Bergeron, but, Mark would be, an obvious top-level producer that could fit in there. I'll be honest, Ken, I spend a lot of time staring at Cap Friendly and looking at the Boston Bruins and looking at their key players that are signed long-term that aren't going anywhere. Players like a Brandon Carlo that's got a modified no trade or no move, where you would think there's a good chance the Jets would be on that list. Unless Connor Hellebuyck was dealt and there's a hole for a goaltender, and either Ullmark or Swayman is a key part of that package going forward, I have a really, really hard time wrapping my head around a fit for a potential trade that would make sense for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, it's super interesting, Huston. Brandon Carlo is a guy, we've been talking about the need for the defensive core to have, different pieces coming in. A big-bodied right-hand shot who plays with size and physical nature. Would the Jets benefit from having a Brandon Carlo? Yes, but if that was a target for them, they should have got the deal done before July 1 when the modified no move kicked in, right? So that's not to say that, you're right, Carl, that Winnipeg probably is on that list. We don't know that for sure, but, chances are good that is the case. That's not to say that he wouldn't waive if that was presented in front of him, but, I'm not sure about the timing now, Huss, for sure. Swayman, obviously, and Trent Frederick, those are two guys who need new deals as RFAs. Those are two big pieces of business for the Boston Bruins. If the Bruins are to make a move for Mark Scheifele, even at the 6.125 this year, they're going to have to move salary back, and whether that's a Matt Grzelcyk or somebody else. This is a team that's already pretty tight to the cap, and people are like, oh, well, they're going to lose their top two centers. Well, they got to replace them. Well, that's true technically, but they don't have $12 million available to replace those two centermen.
Both of those guys were on incredibly cheap deals and had such great seasons that there were bonuses that the Bruins are paying for this year. So, it is a very hard puzzle to put together to make sense for both teams. And as I said, maybe this conversation is a little different if Connor Hellebuyck has been moved and the Jets have, a need for another goaltender, an elite, NHL level goaltender along with Laurent Brossoit. But that really isn't the case. But listen, regardless of the Jets' role in all of this, how do you see things going forward for Boston? Because you just laid it out. Swayman needs a deal. Frederick needs a deal. They don't have any money, and they've got two massive holes at the center ice position from two guys that have been incredible contributors for so long in Beantown.
Yeah, no doubt, Huston. I think that's why, we've been talking about it on this program for a couple of months now. I think that's why the appeal of Elias Lindholm is so high for Boston. You're saving $2 million almost, and you're replacing, Bergeron with, let's just say, Bergeron light, for lack of a better term, in terms of two-way play. So until we get resolution, this was an important domino here, but the domino doesn't necessarily lead to 6 other things happening here, which is why, we're in a bit of a quiet zone here, and we talk about it all the time. In July, the NHL is at the situation, and it's almost August. All GMs are sitting back and saying, hey, which players are or may be available. Now, blow me away with an offer. If not, the gone fishing sign is put up, right? Obviously these guys are taking calls, but you're only taking serious calls right now. So lots of teams are looking for lots of things. Now there's really no timeline until there's no pressure point here, Huss, now until, the season gets, teams got to be cap compliant, but that's basically October 9th right now. Right. So, you can run it 10% over during the summer. And then, when it comes down to making the opening day rosters for October 9th, I think now you're going to see pressure points. And that's not to say things can't happen. And that's not to say things can't happen with the Jets, because as we've talked about for months as well, there's still a logjam on defense. So I do expect there will be moves happening, but there just isn't a whole lot going on in the NHL right now. I think people kind of like pushed back from the table and are sort of reassessing where they're at with salary cap and everything else. And, then you get the occasional curveball like we see with the Arizona Coyotes convincing Logan Cooley. And for Jets fans, the parallel would be the year that Mason Appleton was expected to be the captain of the Michigan State Spartans going into his junior year, right after his second year at Michigan State. The idea was that Appleton would go back and be the captain. He was already named captain. But after the development camp, both sides got together and, they changed their mind. And then he had the great year with the Moose. And then, his career has gone nicely since. Now, the difference is, Appleton was a late round draft pick and Cooley's a top 5 pick. So, I mean, that's the difference, but the parallels are there. Now, how does that relate to the Jets right now? It doesn't. It's just to say that there isn't a whole lot happening unless there's something happening, with the top prospect, which Jets kind of got their ducks in the row with that earlier, with Chibrikov already coming over at the end of last year to kind of, skate with the Moose and get acclimated a little bit. Now he's at a development camp, but now it's just sort of a matter of which way things are going to go. And, Huss, we've been talking too a lot about Nino Niederreiter. I mean, he's a guy that, he loves Winnipeg. Mike McIntyre, the Free Press, had a great piece with him recently where he expressed his, and again, I loved everything about this. A, he expressed his desire to stick around, but B, here's a guy, Huss, who's been in the league for a long time, a prolific goal scorer, a consistent 20-goal guy. What's he talking about? The need to earn his next contract, right? He's not out here saying, I need $6 million or $5 million or no chance of sticking around. He's saying, I need to earn my next contract with the Winnipeg Jets. So if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and Larry Simmons, you love hearing that, but I would suggest, Huss, that it's great for the player to say that. If you're the Jets, you want to be locking down Nino Niederreiter to a deal before the season starts, right? You want clarity there. Much like we've talked about wanting clarity on the back end with guys like Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon going into the last year of their deals. I think a Nino Niederreiter extension, Huss, in the reconfigured priority wish list, I would say Nino Niederreiter getting a new deal for him is probably somewhere, let's say around third, maybe second or third on that list right now.
It's funny. I mean, we kind of kicked this around a little while ago, and we kind of said of all the guys with expiring deals, Helly, Scheif, Dillon, DeMello, Nino Niederreiter, he's been here the shortest time.
Yeah.
But part of me thinks that he's the most likely guy that will be extended. And I think it's because of how impressive he's been as a guy off the ice. I think he, is really warm to this city and the organization. And, for all those reasons, I think there's definitely value in keeping him around, especially when some younger guys, the McGroartys and Barlows, start coming into the lineup in the next couple seasons beyond here. And this is no shot at DeMello or Dillon, but those guys' situations are really interesting. Of course, they're both, I believe, going to be on the other end of 30. And we've talked so much about, how are they going to work this with, having spots for younger players that, are ready to play with the guys that they have right now. And both of those players, I think, would have significant value at the trade deadline. But it is wild how we're talking a lot about the deadline. And I don't know if you caught this, Ken. We were kind of talking about Ohtani and what the Angels did last night, getting Lopez and Giolito from the Sox, being like out of the playoffs right now and literally saying we are going for it right now with these guys. Maybe a little easier when you got Artie Moreno money and you're in a Major League Baseball to take those sort of risks and rebuild through free agency. But, if we are somewhat status quo, and I guess you can mention if you do think that there'll be a change before training camp on the blue line, but if we are status quo, not only is it going to be fascinating to just say how they handle the 8 defensemen that will likely be on the team at the beginning of the season, but just how difficult it's going to be to move on players that will have significant value at the deadline if this team is in a good position for the playoffs.
Yeah, super interesting, Huss. And, as a baseball fan, I think it was smart for the Angels to extend or, to try to get into the wild card situation. If you're trying to convince Ohtani to stick around, you can't sell. I mean, I know some people are saying, trade Ohtani and then bring him back. That I don't. Sorry. If you give Ohtani a taste with a contender, your chances of bringing him back, I would say, are very low. There was about a 14-minute window there where people were wondering if the Toronto Blue Jays might make a pitch for Ohtani, which certainly piqued my interest as a baseball fan, Huss, as you know. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how it relates, again, and I had Giolito in one of my NL fantasy leagues for a long time. I mean, there were some injuries there before he went to Chicago, but this is a primetime pitcher. So if you've got guys like Trout and Ohtani that have barely played in the playoffs, you need to do everything you can to try to make it. So when it comes to the Jets, yeah, I mean, Huss, this is what we've talked about a lot. I mean, you need some clarity. Otherwise, you're running yourself into, talking yourself into self-rentals. And there's value on that in the right situation and circumstance. But I still do think that, again, this stopped me. If we rewind the tape to last year around August, we thought there would be more action on the back end going into the season as well. But I genuinely believe that there has to be at least one move. And I still think the Jets are probably in a situation that's better for them. If they make two moves on the blue line, you're probably moving an experienced player out, and you're moving probably either a prospect or someone who has previously been a prospect out in order to get some clarity. Now, sure, Leon Gavanka, moving him to San Jose, bringing back a prospect, a lottery ticket, that's a smart move. That's a benefit to them. They have another left shot defenseman who's mobile and can push for NHL work. But you still have too many. You still have too many D-men for the spots that are available, and we know they can do it. But I don't see a scenario where having Ville Heinola with the Manitoba Moose is a good idea under any circumstance. Now, unless it's a very brief time at the start of the year where you're thinking about a trade and you're worried about, maybe a waiver claim or something else. Maybe you can move a guy if somebody gets hurt in another organization early on. But I know you talked about it with a Marat as well, Huss. I mean, the longer Ville Heinola is in the American Hockey League, the more likely it is for him to have bad habits that don't translate well to the National Hockey League. So this is a guy that needs to get some runway in the NHL, whether it's with the Jets or someone else. Yeah, of course, there are risks involved with that as well. Yes, we understand that. But if he's not going to be with the Jets, I think they would have moved him by now, Huss. That would be my other counter, right? But the fact that Heinola wasn't moved around draft time when people were trying to get more picks in that draft suggests to me that he's going to be at least involved in the mix to compete for one of those spots. And I mean, Declan Chisholm, I think, is in that mix as well. And, who's going to be playing on that third pairing, and, what does it look like? And man, it just, to me, and I totally understand. And Kevin Cheveldayoff said this last year, Huss, you don't want to go into a situation. You'd much rather have too many than not enough. And hey, you don't have to look that far in the old rear view mirror to remember a time when the Jets turned over their entire right side plus Ben Sherratt, and they were, let's not say having trouble to fill those spots, but they were playing guys that were below replacement level at the National Hockey League level, and they don't want to do that again. And I understand that completely. But in terms of clarity, I still see the Jets making a move prior to training camp, or prior to at least one and probably two prior to their season opener. But, the offer's got to be right, and the deal's got to be there. Otherwise, like you said, then you roll the dice throughout the course of the year and maybe their value rises. But as you mentioned, that also brings into the equation potential for injury. And if the team is doing well and in a playoff spot, now you're either convincing yourself that a self-rental is a good idea, or you are moving out a player, and there will come a risk with that as well, right? If you're trading for futures, then you either are hoping that Declan Chisholm or Ville Heinola can come up and fill that spot, but the Jets don't have a lot of guys who play like those two players in terms of Dylan with the way he is a physical force, pretty mobile
Especially
guy.
his defense is getting bigger. I mean, it's such a copycat league. Look at what the blue line for the Stanley Cup champs are right now. Not a lot of little dudes out there, and that's a big part of like what they put together. And I mean, I'll tell you what, if Brendan Dillon's still on the club at the trade deadline, there will be teams that will probably be able to give you at least what you gave up to get him originally,
sure,
if not
the 2
more.
seconds, yeah.
I would agree. But again, it does make it very hard to me. I mean, if the team plays well, Ken, the other thing, and especially for guys like Connor and guys like Ehlers that are still going to be around beyond, and I mean, guys, Ehlers would only have one more year, but I think they'd certainly, most people would say we'd love to keep Nikolai Ehlers as part of this group long term into this next sort of phase of the Winnipeg Jets. Like you could certainly make your argument that guys in a year or two, this is going to make a lot of sense for us. But man, it's hard to, and I'm just talking about trading Brendan Dillon at that point in time. Right. Never mind a Mark Scheifele or Connor Hellebuck if they're still with the club. I mean, it's a real catch-22.
Yeah, and with Dylan DeMello, Huss, he's just coming off one of the best offensive. We always talk about Dylan DeMello as a defense-first player. He added that offensive layer to his game and became even more valuable in a season where Josh Morrissey got Norris Trophy votes. So, and there's no natural candidate on the right side to just slide in and play alongside Morrissey if you think about moving DeMello. DeMello's a guy who enjoys the community. He's played in Ottawa and enjoyed it, did a great job with Thomas Chabot as a partner for a lot of the time. He's been a, real stabilizer with Josh Morrissey. We know how much they enjoy playing on a pairing together. This is a guy who enjoys the community. He has they have a young family. North of 30, yes, but I don't see a whole lot of, until Elias Solomonson is ready to be an NHLer. And again, he's not going to jump into the NHL as a top pairing person. So having him on another, extending him makes a whole lot of sense when you look at the right-handed depth chart. So yeah. And then when you talk about Scheifele and Hellebuck, yeah, those are going to be real major choices and commitments that are going to be made. And it's super interesting, and you're bringing in all kinds of outside forces and everything else. But ultimately, we'll just see where the players are at in this thing, Huss, and we'll see where the team is at. I mean, do the Jets, would they like to extend Connor Hellebuck? Yes. Do they want to extend him into his late 30s? That's something we don't know for sure. And we don't know what the number would be. And, what about the one thing I've been wondering about Huss in the last few weeks, and no, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on some levels, but what about a higher AAV for a shorter amount of time? I know we've talked about that briefly, but what if it's $11 million for 2 or 3 years? Now, for a guy who just finished a $37 million a year deal, you go 3 at 11, or let's just say in that neighborhood, you've added $33 million to the pool. I mean, is that better than going 8 times 5 or 8 times 6? I'm not sure how the player would view that, but that must be something that's been potentially at least discussed internally by the Jets. I'm not sure that the agent would be looking at things that way, but I mean that it's something that at some point I wonder if there is a shorter term deal at a higher AAV. It is risky for the player, of course, but it also provides, guaranteed money in the bank, and then allows you to probably cash in a couple of years where the salary cap is going, a lot higher. And
Hellebuck is a guy that I think would be more than happy to somewhat bet on himself. I mean, if you talked about if he's getting the money that he has legitimately earned as one of the top goaltenders, and he feels like he's being paid market value, even if the term is not there, knowing that it's not really there anywhere, as from what we've seen.
Right.
Make that happen and give someone a tough decision in 3 years to continue paying that, because you're still one of the best in the league. But listen, I mean, God knows we've spent a lot of time on these situations, and that hasn't changed. But specifically to the blue line, you mentioned that you expect 1, potentially 2 moves. What sort of a move? I mean, is there a player you think is more likely to go than others? And what are the Winnipeg Jets looking to get back in return? Because I mean, more often than not, if you're trading one of these players, there's not a lot of teams with a lot of cap space that can just take a player, stick him on their roster, without giving anything back. Like, would the Jets like some futures, would like some picks? I'm sure that would be part of it. But I think we can assume that there'll be NHL talent coming back. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you're thinking about moving one of these players, what makes the most sense to come back in return, knowing that you're trying to open up a spot or two for young guys to come in that are already within your organization?
Yeah, for sure, Huston. I would think that there would be some replenishing of the picks as well there. We know that the Jets are, pretty good shape for next year's draft, but I could see some futures element involved there. But, when it comes, eventually a lot of it is dictated by what happens with Scheifele, right? I mean, we've talked about this before also, whether it's Nemesnikov, Vilardi, Perfetti, like some combination, one of those guys is going to be playing center and potentially two are, depending on what happens with Scheifele. So, when it comes to a Brendan Dillon or, for me, I think Logan Stanley would make the most sense to move Huss because, he has expressed a desire for a fresh start previously to last year's trade deadline. The fact that it hasn't happened yet, I don't know what we can glean from that. If maybe that's, maybe the price tag is what the Jets are asking for in return is too high. I would think there'll be some interest for sure, given his pedigree. We know, as you just mentioned, teams value size, and Logan does have a bit of a mean streak there as well. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see him moved. Unless the Jets go back to their original thinking, which, part of the reason they kept him in the expansion draft as a protected player was that they believed in him long term. So if they think it was just related to injuries last year and that they want to give him another shot, well, then he will be around. But I would say that if we're ranking the players who have either expressed interest to be moved or don't necessarily fit into the top 6 right now, unless something is changing, I would say Stanley would be in that mix. And then too, I wonder about some of the younger guys. I mean, I think the Jets are banking on Neil Pionk having a big year. We both have talked about this as well, Huss, where Pionk's injuries they've been a big factor the last 2 years. I mean, but there have been times where he's shown signs of the player that came over in the Trouba deal and made an immediate impact. The guy that drives Connor McDavid crazy, we have seen that player on occasion. We just need to see it for an extended period of time. And I think health would be a big part of that. So I don't think the Jets would be looking at moving Neil Pionk. I think it's going to be the opposite. I think he's going to take on back to being, he was still a minute muncher even when he was not fully healthy. So I'm expecting him to have a big year ahead. I don't think he would be in danger of being moved. I mean, Nate Schmidt, I thought he had a great playoff for the Jets, are solid for sure. Is the contract, close to 6? Is that a little bit too high for a third pairing guy? Yes. But Nate brings a little
too high to I mean,
tough to absorb for another team.
If there was a taker for Nate Schmidt, as great of a guy he is and all the things that he brings to the locker room, I think they would have jumped at any opportunity to do that, just what that would mean for the numbers and, obviously for their cap situation as well. And we had heard that Schmidt was a guy who would have potentially been on the move in a potential Travis Sanheim deal. But again, all you're doing is getting a younger player, but signed for another 6 years at a pretty big commitment. And it didn't seem like that was something the Winnipeg Jets were willing to do at that time. But I mean, here's the thing. We know the top 6, the way they are right now. It doesn't include Logan Stanley. It does include Dylan Samberg. I mean, is that going to be the top 6 at the beginning of the year? And then is it a matter of whether it's Capobianco and Declan Chisholm, whether it's Villy, whether it's Logan Stanley, 2 guys just waiting for an injury or a chance to get in spot duty and play a few games until maybe the dust settles or someone, not that you hope this to happen, but would be unavailable for a longer period of time?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to weigh in with Samberg. I think that he's going to be taking on a much larger role this year. We know that he's played with Pionk at times in the past and looked really good there. I would expect that his value is going to only increase. We know his defensive metrics were excellent last year. We know he had went through a really tough thing late in the year and in the playoffs, but handled it incredibly well. I think that he is a person who's going to only get better with time, and I think the commitment that the defensive coaching staff is going to show in him is only going to help him continue on his ascent to being a very impactful player. What that means for the rest is, is still a bit unclear. I don't know that it's going to be as simple as saying those are the 6. I still think that one of those guys is going to be moved, though. Like I said, I can't really. It's very cloudy in the old crystal ball to try to predict who that person will be. But I do think that the Jets want to inject some new blood on that blue line. Whether it's Chisholm, whether it's Heinola, that will be determined. And Huss, we know what happened last year. It was an open competition for that 6th spot. And even when Dylan Samberg was playing well, he was taken out of the lineup at times. I don't see that happening for him this year, unless his play doesn't warrant him being a full-time player. But as mentioned, I think there's a much better chance that Samberg works himself into a second pairing role than being in a rotation for a 6th spot. Does that put someone like Nate Schmidt on high alert where he's in the rotation? I'm not certain. I expect Nate Schmidt to have a good year as well. And us, we know that, Nate's one of those guys who, bought a house here and is invested and, has a young family himself. So I think that he's really flourished in that sort of mentorship role, him and playing on the pairing with Samberg previously. I think that he would openly embrace the chance to play, whether it's with Heinola or Chisholm. I would think that one of those 2 guys is going to settle in on the 3rd pairing with him, and then whether it's DeMello or Dylan, who is or is not sticking around beyond this year, maybe one of those guys is one of the guys that is moved out, because there would be value in teams looking for players like that. But right now, if I had to guess, I would say Dylan DeMello would be a stronger candidate to extend, because I think he's 2 years younger. I think he's 31 and Brendan Dillon is 33. So. But I also know that the Jets value what Brendan Dillon brings to the table. So I could also see one of those guys being involved in a deal with Hellebuyck or Scheifele if it gets to that point where the Jets move one of those guys as well. So a lot of uncertainty, Huss. I mean, we're going to have to get to training camp, because until we get to training camp, we're not going to have a lot of those answers, right? And even when training camp starts, we're going to be, deciphering, we were joking about it during development camp, the first rollout with the groupings and who's playing with whom and, for how long, and is it in the first game, how many veterans are going in that first road game, this is one of the years where there is a legitimate level of open competition. I mean, there was some of that last year, but kind of had a pretty good idea how it was going to sort itself out. And now this year, there are still some question marks. There aren't as many question marks.
I mean, listen, if the blue line is the blue line the way it is right now, I don't know that there's really a lot of open competition, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I could see at some point Nate Schmidt maybe spend some time in the press box, and I think he'd be a guy that would be able to handle it. He wouldn't be sour. He'd still be a great teammate. I mean, it's not a great look having a $6 million guy a healthy scratch, but I mean, that could happen if you're going to get those guys in. I mean, to me, it's far more the forward group that, I think there's some room for some guys to sort of step up, and, there's not a lot of established spots already. And obviously there could be even more opportunity depending if there's a move or two with forwards. And again, but I think if that happens, you're probably getting guys to come in. The one thing that's going to be different from this training camp than any have been before is that so many of the questions aren't necessarily going to be about the home opener. It's going to be about the futures of these players, especially Hellebuyck and Scheifele, considering the summer that we've been through. But Dylan and DeMello and Nito Niederreiter until that happens as well. And that's a very different scenario than we've seen for this Winnipeg Jets hockey club really for a long time.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And yeah, I mean, the competition among the forward group is going to be, far more enticing probably, Huss, because there are jobs available potentially on the 3rd line now, right? And I mean, even higher in the lineup. There's maybe, if you're a guy like Mason Appleton, you see guys coming for your job, but you also think back of a time a few years ago when there were injuries and maybe he was used into the top 6 at various points. And, are they going to go try to spread things out a little bit more in that middle 6 after the top line gets established? I mean, we know there's going to be better balance from the Jets, but I think they're in a situation, Huss, where their organizational depth up front, it's not just opening night roster and who's the 13th forward, but who's going to be the first call-up. We saw what Jansen Harkins did when he went down to the Manitoba Moose last year. There are other guys, young prospects, that are going to be pushing for work and that want to be in the mix and that want to, push themselves to be in consideration for that, eventually that second line center job, not necessarily out of this camp, but guys who legitimately feel like they have a chance, guys like Lucius and Lambert. I mean, those are guys who they can change the formula pretty easily if those guys show that they can be centermen at the pro level and really have dynamic starts with the Moose after a strong NHL training camp. So that to me is where there's real intrigue, but the intrigue really won't stop until we know, as you mentioned, not just what the opening day roster looks like, but how long those guys are sticking around, if they are with the Jets out of the gate, and what is the value as they move along. I mean, we talked about DeMello earlier. I mean, Dylan DeMello is only raising his value, but it only makes it harder to replace him if there's no commitment beyond this year in place, right? That's the other thing with where the Jets are at. And you could argue to a degree it's similar with Scheifele, because there isn't, we mentioned Lambert and Lucius, but those guys need to show that they can play center at the AHL level for an extended period of time before they're ready to be NHL players, let alone, jumping into a second line center role potentially, fairly quickly out of the gate. But, that's part of the fun, Huss. There's a lot of intrigue and, interest around this team, what direction it's going. And I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. They're right now, I would say they're a bubble team, but they're a bubble team that is going to be hard to play against, and they still have an element of skill that will make them dangerous. And any team that has Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit between the pipes, they're going to be competitive, Huss, most nights. And I think that that's a huge advantage for the Jets compared to, there are a lot of teams that would be in that bubble category. The Jets are in a great spot because of a lot of those things that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Ken Wiebe with us. Hey, Weber, before we go, non-Jets question. Everyone was up in arms yesterday about the news that Matt Murray's all of a sudden injured and is going on LTIR. Can you explain how the Leafs can get away with this and what is involved? He was just pronounced okay to play during the playoffs. How does this happen? And did it raise your smell test when you saw the news yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean he's on LTIR for the year. Like, I don't think this is a Robin Lehner situation where the Leafs aren't expecting him back at some point. I mean, I don't know the medical records, Huss, but you can't just write up a fake prescription from a doctor and say, Matt Murray, we don't have room for Matt Murray.
This is Robidas Island, right? This is Robidas Island.
It is
this
the
is
equivalent.
Joffrey Lupul.
Sure, but I mean, if Matt Murray is not actually injured or is not, technically on board with this, there will be a grievance filed. Like, this is simple. Like, this isn't as simple as someone in the Leafs saying, you know how we can get the eraser out here to erase our cap problem is tell Matt Murray to get on board with this. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, again, I'm not ready to call foul play here. Yes, Matt Murray was cleared in the playoffs, but he didn't play, right? So it's not like he just played.
Because he stinks.
Well, but I'm just saying that people are saying, oh, well, he was clear for this. Well, it's not like he went and played the playoffs, played 15, 16 games in the playoffs, and then now is suddenly ending up with a medical issue. Let's look at the history of Matt Murray. Matt Murray's been hurt a lot in his career, Huss. It's not like they're just pulling this out of left field that this guy suddenly pulled a hamstring. Like, this is a guy who's been hurt for a lot of his career, and that sort of derailed him at a lot of times.
Just proactively saying he's hurt before he gets hurt.
Well, I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that it's a hard. This job is hard on your body, no matter what position you play. I mean, like, people would say this too, Huss. I mean, and we know this because we watched him. Like, if you watch Shea Weber during the run that included dismantling the Jets and into the Stanley Cup final, how many people would have predicted that was the last NHL game he was going to play? Like, healthy enough to play in the Stanley Cup final and then done for your career. I mean, that adds up because of the physical toll on your body over the course of those years. Now, is Matt Murray going to come back at some point? Like, the Leafs also could have made this go away by buying him out, right? I mean, I think it's only 1 year left. Yeah. I could be wrong, right? He's got 1 year left. And then that's where the other argument for the conspiracy theorists out there, Huss, Matt Murray on LTI gets his full salary. Matt Murray bought out gets 2/3 of his salary. So, I mean, is that, some people are speculating, maybe that's why the player might be okay with it. Again, I'm not ready to point fingers and cry foul yet, but certainly it's going to be something that's looked at. Again, the league's not going to approve LTIR unless there is, doctor's notes and exams, all of the, MRIs and all these other things. So it's not as easy as people saying, just shaft the system and this is a big joke. Well, if it is, it's going to be shown to be, and there will be consequences.
Yeah, I got slapped on the wrist because I did make a bit of a crack on Twitter. I wonder if he's allergic to his hockey equipment. And
Ooh, ouch.
a few
Andrew.
of the Chicago guys came in like, you got to read Marian Hossa's book. You know, he went through a lot. He was on a bunch of drugs to allow him to play, which is fine. However, I still maintain that it is somewhat an interesting coincidence that he played every game in the season, every game in the playoffs, and then when his salary dropped to $1 million, was unable to keep doing it. But as I said, it was a bit of a cheap shot, just a bit of a joke. I will always remain somewhat skeptical of the timing, at least, even if he was dealing with that for a long time. But that's part of the interesting topics that get kicked around at this time when we see guys strangely end up on LTIR for teams that are in cap hell and somehow manage to come out of the bingo. What's on tap tonight?
Hang on. It's another great example of we're like slowly but surely like moving that small J to a large J for you on the journalism side, Andrew. Yes. I'm very proud of you. Yeah, keep digging on these things. What's on tap today? Well, just probably head down to the Broadway area, and we have a couple friends coming in from out of town that are also. There's a big George Strait concert that I will not be attending. That's no judgment from me, but a 2-day show at Nissan Stadium. I have some friends from Calgary coming in for that, so I think they'll be.
What about food? Have you?
We went to Martin's yesterday, Andrew. So
Martin's
it was
barbecue yesterday.
I had the barbecue yesterday.
Rena and I went there. What did you get there?
Brisket, pulled pork, and the jalapeno sausage.
Funny story about that. We went there, and we went there quite late. So
yes,
they were
late.
out of they were out of brisket. So whatever, I had the pulled pork and sausage and stuff like that. And then the next day, we went to the Peg Leg Porker.
Indeed.
And I said, I'll get some brisket there. Well, they don't even serve brisket. And the bartender had a shirt, and like I didn't think much of it or whatever. And it turned around and it said, Tennessee barbecue is pork. If you're looking for brisket, go to Texas. I had a crack on that. I'm like, all right, that was a power move by those folks. Anyways, listen, have a great time, man. We really appreciate you jumping on for a little bit of a chat in the middle of a vacay. Have a great weekend. Take in all that Nashville has to offer, and find your way in between all those bachelorette parties down on Broadway when you get later on. I'm convinced that at any given time, 30% of the population of Nashville, Tennessee, are bachelorette parties from somewhere else in North America.
It's wild, Huss, and the cowboy boot sales were pretty high based on the travels down the streets of Nashville, basically. So
I better see you with a big 10-gallon hat on your Instagram at some point later on this trip.
I don't think that will be happening, but it's just great to be here. Have a great weekend, and it was the golf tour will be resuming next week here. At a fun day at Pinawa on Monday, but. On hold until I return.
Oh, dude, we'll have to get you back with the breezy. The 7th and 15th greens just opened and brand new. The work they've done on the course is unbelievable. But anyways, have a great time there, and we'll see you back next week.
Thanks, my friend. Bart Scott voice. Can't wait. See you soon.
Good stuff. All right, there's Kenny Wiebe. Great stuff from Weber on the road. Listen, it's a very quiet week for the Bombers as they're on the bye week, but be getting back to practice on the weekend because the Lions are here a week today. Huge game. And of course, the 7:30 kickoff means 5:30 at the Princess Auto tailgate zone outside the stadium. Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Blue and Gold and WST, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them at one of 2 Winnipeg locations or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Speaking of your property, Joe, Spicy, Buck, the gang down at Consolidated Supply have so much going on right now, both for the home and outside your home and your property. They are the irrigation experts in town. Of course, have been working with golf courses for years in and around it. You can use that irrigation technology to make your lawn or property look better than ever before. They've also got great artificial turf options, and they are the golf cart leaders in town as the club cart dealer, the exclusive club cart dealer in Manitoba. But they do have other great options for your property, hot tubs, and amazing outdoor kitchens as well. And they are the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at the showroom, open to the public. Consolidated Supply, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. It was great to see Greg and the Royal boys at the game last night. Of course, Royal Sports is Manitoba's #1 sports superstore with the biggest and best selection of licensed team gear, featuring all the home teams, as well as the biggest and best around the National Football League, NHL, Major League Baseball, World Soccer, and more. Huge selection of Canada gear. Huge win for our ladies yesterday at the World Cup. If you want to grab one of those new jerseys or some Canada soccer gear, massive section right now. And while you're there, check out their baseball, softball, tennis equipment, disc golf, bikes, and more to get the most out of summer. 750 Pembina Highway. Give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. And of course, our friends at Boston Pizza are ready for the weekend. The best place to get together with friends to watch the big game, even if the Bombers are on the bye, is your local BP. Ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and a great patio somewhere near you. Pop by BP, and if you are staying in, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. Well, speaking of those Goldeyes, what a great night it was last night with our friends from the chat room and Winnipeg Sports Talk podcast and YouTube listeners and viewers getting together down for a big Goldeyes win. We didn't get nuked by a tornado. We saw a great game, and the fun's not stopping, though, with that game on Wednesday. We got Oktoberfest in July tomorrow. We got tons of stuff. In fact, let's bring in Andrew Collier, GM of the Winnipeg Goldeyes, to talk a little bit about last night, but look ahead to a very fun weekend at Shaw Park. Cash, we had a great time last night. Thanks to you and the staff for accommodating the WST crew. What a great night we had, and what a nice win it was for the home team as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was great to see so many of your viewers and listeners coming out to the ballpark, and you and I were talking off air. A lot of them hadn't been to the ballpark in a while, so it was a win-win for everyone. And big kudos to Will in the ticket office for arranging all the tickets for everybody. He did a great job.
He did, and he popped by as well, and I know Will's a regular listener, so we'll give him a shout out. And again, everybody that came out, it was fun. And I mean, that night, just to echo what we said before, I mean, there were a lot of people that for whatever reason have been to a game before, might not have been in the last couple of years. I mean, there were a few people that literally that was the first time back in the ballpark since the pandemic, which, I mean, partly feels like 10 years ago, partly feels like yesterday. But overall, it was, a heck of a night. And things are sort of turning around for the Fish at home as well. The 6 runs of insurance, I think, made everyone feel a little bit better going in, but you didn't have to use the closer. I mean, overall, been a really nice start to this homestand, Andrew.
Yeah, really good. Good start from Barassa, getting 7 innings, and Janren, who has moved to the bullpen now, and he came in and threw 2 innings of great relief, and not just saving our closer, but the rest of the bullpen. And with Fargo coming in after tonight for 4 games, I'm sure it's going to be all hands on deck during that series.
No doubt about that. Hey, just listen, before we get to tonight, tomorrow, the rest of the weekend, how was the Ballpark Brewfest on the weekend?
It was a lot of fun. It was really good. Yeah, it was about the same number of tickets sold, but I think there were more people here. I think there might have been some no-shows last year, but from talking to the brewers, they said it felt like there was more people there, and the weather was great again. And yeah, a good time had by all the bands that we had playing. A lot of good comments on them, and yeah, just good day all around. And we shortened it from 5 hours to 4 hours this year, and that's plenty of time to get to all the different brewers and have your samples.
Well, and it is an extra hour from Flatlanders, so certainly still a little more bang for your buck. Anyways, we're looking forward to taking part in that next year as well. So we had our big night last night, but as we've talked for the last little while, this is a very, very busy time in the promo schedule. And the beer steins coming out tonight to Oktoberfest in July.
That's tomorrow night.
It's tomorrow night.
Tonight is country night, so that'll be a lot of fun. Brody Jackson and the crew will be here tonight. And then tomorrow night is Oktoberfest in July, where we're handing out the beer steins. There's going to be a barbecue on the promenade with brats. Proceeds to the Field of Dreams Foundation from the sale of those, and German bands and dancers. Should be a lot of fun.
Brats, my favorite. Would love to have that being a regular. We need to actually just like a good hot dog place in Winnipeg to have brats as well, so we can be doing it 365 during the year. And then comes the weekend, and I know there's a giveaway on Sunday. Is it the sleepover night on Saturday?
It is.
So yes. All the scouts are coming out. Just fill people in if they're not aware what the scene is like on the scout sleepover day, because I know it is a highlight of the season for a lot of young Goldeyes fans, and it really is a unique event that frankly only happens in minor league baseball. Yeah,
so we usually do this twice a year. Sometimes 3 years. We had the Girl Guides sleepover earlier in the season. We had the Scouts sleepover coming up Saturday night. So right after the game, we clear everybody out, and then the Scouts and their parents come back in with their sleeping bags and tents, and they get all camped out for the night in the outfield, and then they watch a movie, and then sleep overnight, and then they're gone by 9 a.m.
Oh, that'll be great. Now, do you have to hang out all night and be a camp counselor for that, or do you actually get to leave the facility?
When I was much younger, I would stay all night just to make sure everything went well. I don't do that anymore. No, I watch the movie and then I get out of here.
Hey, speaking of making sure everything goes well, it was somewhat ominous as we all got to the ballpark last night that everybody's phones started going off with tornado warnings. Obviously, I mean, no harm, no foul at the ballpark, and everything went great. But what happens if some really severe weather comes in? Fill us in on, as I know people are wondering, like, okay, like what if? And I mean, God, we were lucky. I mean, if you look at the size of that supercell that ran through just Manitoba from north of the city, would have been a tough time to get our ball game in last night if that was over the city. But what happens if you ever did have a tornado or something like that coming in the ballpark with the fans in the stands?
Yeah, that was kind of crazy yesterday. I was watching the radar from probably 3 o'clock on, and that cell just popped up north of the city, and it just grew and grew. And the concern was that it would come south. Fortunate for us, not so fortunate for those that live north of the city. Thoughts are with anybody who lost, had some damage from the storm. But we were watching, and it continued to trend north and east. So probably by 6 o'clock, I wasn't terribly worried about it. Obviously, other things can pop up, but based on what I was seeing on the radar and the satellite, I was pretty sure that it was moving. But like you said, there are plans in place, and basically, if some dramatic weather like that happened, the plan is to have the fans. Basically, if you're in rows 10 and below, you would go down to the field, and our fan service reps would usher everybody underneath. In the tunnels underneath and in the loading dock areas, so everybody's undercover. Rows 10 and up would go up to the concourse and then down the stairs to the same area. There's tons of space underneath the ballpark, so I'm confident that everybody would be safe and we'd be able to handle this in an orderly manner. And like I said, we were watching it. Every 30 seconds, I was refreshing my screen and I was watching the skies. And if the wind picked up at all, we wouldn't have hesitated to move people underneath.
You've been with this club for a long time. What's the worst weather that, like, is there one weather event when it comes to Goldeyes baseball that stands out amongst others?
Well, our home opener in 2022, we had 80-kilometer-an-hour winds during the game, so that wasn't a lot of fun. It wasn't really dangerous, but it was miserable to be here watching the game. We've had situations where it's picked up the tarp, even with sandbags on it, and thrown it into the outfield. One of the greatest tarp stories I have is Rick Forney came out one day because it was so windy. He actually came out to help, and he was on the end holding on to one of the straps, and this gust of wind just picked up, and everybody just let go. He hung on, and the tarp went flying, and he was standing there with the strap. It actually ripped out of his hands. He was still holding the strap, and the tarp was gone.
I can see it. Rick was a big, strong dude. He's one of the few guys capable of still holding that thing on and going toe-to-toe with Mother Nature.
It was an incredible sight. And you've seen the tarp videos where people get trapped underneath. We've had that situation before. We've had to go find cell phones and radios after the fact. We've pulled the tarp in sleet and hail. Over the years, you see just about everything, and I was hoping that we didn't see another event last night. So thankfully, it passed by.
Well, I mean, looking at some of the size of those hailstones at some of those areas, I mean, that would have nuked the entire parking lot. So, listen, we dodged one last night, and thank God, because I think everyone, the over 100 people that came out for the Winnipeg Sports Talk crew, was very happy to max out on everything that night. Some food, some beers, some good times, and that's what heading out to the Goldeyes is all about. Good luck this weekend. Keep it rolling on home field. Some fun nights, some good promos, and hopefully some continued wins for the home team.
Yeah, that would be great. It was so much fun having you guys here last night, and all your listeners, all your viewers. And like I said, next year, bigger and better.
You bet. Andrew, good luck this weekend. Thanks for doing this as always.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks to Andrew and the Goldeyes staff for the great hospitality last night. And again, to everyone that came out. And if you didn't, you missed out, but we'll be doing something again maybe in August. So stay tuned to WST for that. All right. We got to give a shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. We almost drained them out of generic lager last night, I think. And a special shout out to Brett, the beer guy, and his other cohorts. The beer man doesn't get enough appreciation at the best of times, but on a day like yesterday, those dudes were working overtime, and obviously we were loving the good stuff from our friends at Little Brown Jug, our favorite local beer, 1919 and new generic lager available at the ballpark, and at 1919 now available at Winnipeg Stadium. And listen, the best place to try all the Little Brown Jug offerings is the brewery and tap room down on William Avenue. Beautiful new patio. They launched at the end of last year, where actually we had our first sports trivia night. Get on down there. And hey, you can also find Little Brown Jug anywhere that sells great beer. And I got to give thanks to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. We're down to the single digits of the countdown for my favorite 3 days of the year. If you are thinking about a world-class fly-in fishing experience for a corporate event, customers, or a friends and family trip where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens is the space. World-class fishing, only surpassed by the world-class hospitality of the Aikens team and the Terren family. Find out more online, aikenslake.com, or hit them up on Twitter at Aikens Lake. And of course, no ASD tonight, but they're back at the track coming up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the following week will, of course, be the Manitoba Derby. We'll talk to Darren Dunn coming up next week with a little bit more on the Derby as well. We're not done yet, though. Had a chance a little earlier to catch up with former Super Bowl winner quarterback Shaun King of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Shaun now hosts primetime on VSiN, and lots of interesting NFL stories. His camps are open around the league, and here's Shaun King looking ahead to NFL season on WST. Shaun, what is up? It is great to have you on the program. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be on the airwaves in the great Is it city or state of Winnipeg?
City of Winnipeg, province of Manitoba, and the very large country of Canada that has a hell of a lot of NFL fans, I will tell you that. And, of course, you're down in Vegas, home of the Stanley Cup champions. We saw the Stanley Cup's going to be here for the next probably month because of how many Manitobans there were on the Vegas Golden Knights. But it is good. I'm really pumped to have you on the show because there's a lot of intrigue going into this season, as there always is. But let me just ask you, as a former NFLer, what does this time of year remind you of? Guys going back to training camp. I mean, we're still not even close to the regular season right now. What is this period of time like for NFLers and quarterbacks in particular?
Well, it depends on who you are. I mean, if you're a rookie, it's full of excitement. It's your first camp. You've been dreaming of it your entire life. If you're a big free agent acquisition, like Aaron Rodgers is refreshed, new surroundings, new teammates. But for most of the vets, especially if you did not have turnover at coordinator or head coach, you're not looking forward to camp. I mean, 2 a day, sleeping in a hotel with some guy, like it's not fun. Vets could do away with camp, and it's not nearly as taxing as it used to be. Now they only have 3 preseason games, a lot less 2 a day, so it's easier, but it's still not something as a vet that you look forward to.
It's funny. We were talking to Mark Stone last night. Of course, when you win a championship, you have a much shorter off season. There's a lot more that goes into it. You, of course, were part of that Super Bowl team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How different is the offseason and the beginning of training camp for a team like the Kansas City Chiefs right now that's been celebrating their win for the last few months?
It's not that different, to be honest, because of the parity that exists in the NFL. Unlike most professional leagues, you legitimately have a chance to go from last to first. Look at Jacksonville and what they were under Urban Meyer 2 years ago. Just maybe one of the worst sports years in history for an organization in any league. The following year entered Doug Peterson, basically the same roster, and they're not only in the playoffs with a division title, they win a first-round playoff game with a scintillating second-half comeback versus the Chargers, and they didn't embarrass themselves at Kansas City. Because of the historical context that it really doesn't take a long time to turn it around, the offseason is generally full of excitement or at least expectation for most of the 32 teams.
I imagine former QBs look at some of the money that's being thrown around to QBs right now and go, man, if only I was around 20 years later. But we saw this massive extension for Justin Herbert yesterday. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is like 9th now, and he only signed his deal a couple of years ago, and he signed for the next 9 years. He has said that he doesn't really care as much about the money. He realizes that it's a cap world, and this allows them to keep more of these guys that have helped them win championships. If he has basically that Brady mentality that Brady had throughout his time in New England for the most part, how are teams going to stop Kansas City if Pat Mahomes is more than happy on playing on a majorly discounted deal?
It's really a huge issue for the NFL. They've gotten caught up into paying the position as opposed to paying the player. And here's what I mean by that. Justin Hurts, who led his team to a Super Bowl, signed for $155 million. So when Lamar Jackson got his deal done, he had to get a little more, which was $160. Now Justin Herbert has to get a little more, which is $162. And it's still this little game that the NFL has allowed themselves to get caught up in, and it really, I think, will have a negative long-term impact. And I'm a person that wants the players to make as much as possible. But you can't justify paying Daniel Jones, coming off a year where he threw 15 touchdown passes and you didn't pick up his 5th-year option, $100 million plus guaranteed, but you don't want to play Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's a better football player than Daniel Jones. They just play different positions. And I think that's what's extremely dangerous. If you ask me, you're paying Justin Herbert strictly on potential. If Justin Herbert was really worth $162 million, how in the hell did the Chargers lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars last year with that second half collapse in the first round of the playoffs? And so what you're doing is you're looking at Herbert and you see the small sample size of elite things that he does, and you're paying him in the hopes that that becomes the norm. But if we're being honest, Herbert is extremely talented, but also has been inconsistent. I can watch Justin's tape and say he has to improve markedly in multiple areas before he ever will be an actual championship quarterback. But he has the tools to do it. I don't know that I could ever say that about Daniel Jones. Yet their contracts from a guaranteed money standpoint are in the same ballpark. So this is something that's going to be interesting as we move forward. And Kansas City just is lucky, to answer your Patrick Mahomes question. Zach Martin, the all-pro guard for the Dallas Cowboys, is in the same situation. Signed a multi-year extension with the Cowboys, I think 2 years ago, yet multiple guards that he thinks are inferior to him have come up for contract renewals, and now he's down the list like Mahomes is. He's decided not to show up for camp because he's saying, I'm a better player than other guys at this position who have gotten bigger deals and more money than me because their deals subsequently came up 6 months to 10 months after I did mine.
Shaun King of VSiN with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Shaun, let me ask you about this upcoming season in terms of this. Every year, it seems there's a team that goes from worst to first in their division. There's teams that make huge, huge strides. When you look at either the AFC or the NFC, is there a team or two that you think is poised to make a huge jump this year and go from being basically irrelevant to at least being a playoff contender, if not in the postseason?
Well, the team that I'm high on in the AFC is the Tennessee Titans. In 2020, they were 11-5. In 2021, they were 12-5. In 2022, a lot of people forget this, which is last year, they were 7-3. And then they just completely collapsed down the stretch. Injuries, I think some of the side effects, energy-wise, of the general manager, who also ended up being fired, trading A.J. Brown against the wishes of Mike Vrabel. They lost 7 in a row, and that's how Jacksonville snuck into the playoffs. So fast forward, they've signed DeAndre Hopkins, Ryan Tannehill's in a contract year, Derrick Henry's in a contract year, and Mark Vrabel still is the head coach. I'm high on Tennessee. I think they're going to win that division. I do think they're a legit threat, come playoff time. So the AFC team, I think I said AFC. The AFC team for me is the Titans. And in the NFC, I'm really big on Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks. Think about where they sit post Russell Wilson trade. When that trade was made, people were like, oh my God, Seattle's in the tank. They're tanking for the number 1 pick. All of a sudden, they made the playoffs that subsequent year and were ahead at halftime versus the San Francisco 49ers. They've upgraded and added to their roster via the assets they acquired from the Russell Wilson trade. I love what Pete Carroll has going. Geno Smith signed an extension. He's happy. They added Jackson Smith and Jigba to a receiving corps that already had DK Metcalf and Lockett. I like Seattle to win the NFC West ahead of San Francisco. I haven't heard many people have that opinion.
Those are some nice numbers, too. I'm looking Seattle plus 250 to win the West, and Tennessee is 4-1. I mean, the Jags, people are in on the Jags. Certainly the bookies are at minus 154. Just before we go, Shaun, the Chiefs and the Eagles are the defending champs of each respective conference. Who do you think is the biggest threat to each team in their conference from running it back and being back in the big game in February?
A lot of parity in the AFC. I mean, a lot of parity. If you list the top 12 quarterbacks in the NFL, probably 10 of them on most lists are AFC players. So anytime you're dealing with that caliber of talent, I mean, anybody can beat anybody come to playoffs. I mean, if Rodgers and the Jets make it and he gets hot, or Josh Allen and the Bills make it, or Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who've been in the AFC Championship game the last 2 years at Arrowhead, beat them one time. It took a terrible personal foul call last year in order to get that game to end in the Chiefs' favor in regulation. So I think the AFC is wide open. The Chiefs just got to prove that losing their 2 coordinators isn't something that's going to make them regress. Both the OC and the DC are now head coaches. So we'll see what impact they had from game to game, being able to make adjustments in game, and the people that now man those positions, are they just as capable?
Yeah, the Chiefs are Andy Reid deserves a lot of credit, but you do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Eric Bieniemy can do. It's about damn time that he got an opportunity to go and do it somewhere else and then turn into that head coach. What about for the Eagles? I mean, is there a clear number one threat to Philly on the NFC side, Shaun?
I don't think so. For me, it's Seattle, but I think most people would say San Francisco. I'm a little concerned that quarterback situation is a little more volatile than they think. They seem to have put all their eggs in Brock Purdy's basket, yet they thought so highly of Brock out of college, they waited to the 7th round to draft him. And then they thought so much of him out of training camp that they started Trey Lance and then went to Garoppolo when Trey Lance got hurt. So, I mean, you can lie to me, but just don't do it, directly in my face. So what happens if Brock Purdy does not play at the level of that fantastic run that he encountered last year? How healthy is he coming off of that injury? Don't normally see Tommy John type injuries in that league. So I think they have some question marks. Joey Bosa has decided that he's going to take the Zach Martin approach. He feels like he's worth more than some of these DNs that just recently got their contracts renewed. So he's not at camp. They dealt with this last year with Deebo Samuel. I think there's some question marks there. DeMeco Ryans is not the D coordinator now. He is in Houston as the head coach. So I don't think this is as seamless as people think for San Francisco.
Hey, Shaun, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this. Just fill people in on what you got cooking on VSiN with the Primetime Show.
So you guys can catch us on VSiN. That's the Vegas Sports Information Network. That's VSIN. If you have YouTube TV, we're on YouTube TV. You can download the app. You can listen to the show for free for a small fee. You can actually get the video access to the show. It's Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Pacific. If you're a social media person, follow me on Twitter at Real Shaun King. That's SHAUN. If you're on Instagram, it's at Coach Shaun King. Enjoy the upcoming NFL season. I'll tell a quick story as we exit. I have been to Winnipeg before. I was tricked by the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They made me think that team was based in Mississauga, not in Hamilton. They did not take me to Hamilton on my visit. They took me to Mississauga. So it was a situation where I got fooled, but the first preseason game was in Winnipeg. So shout out to everybody there in Winnipeg. Enjoy your year. Great. Thanks for having me on.
Shaun, this was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can maybe catch up in the season. You be well, my friend, and keep on doing it over at VSiN. Thanks for your time. What a story. Tricked by the Hamilton Tiger Cats by taking him to Mississauga as opposed to Hamilton, getting him to sign there. It was brief, but shout out to Craig Smith, who was mentioning, I believe Craig was involved with the Ticats at the time, and he was dealt. But fun getting together with Shaun King. Cannot wait for NFL season, fantasy drafts, and whatnot over the course of the next month. But Remis, while we were playing that with Shaun, I hope Winnipeg Walter's not in the chat right now, because Joe Burrow just got carted off in practice. Saw a video. It was a non-contact injury. You got to be freaking out if you are the Bengals, and if you're Joe Burrow's agent. Of course, he has been playing right now despite not having his new contract yet, and he said, hey, he didn't want to miss chances to get better. God, this would be horrible if he got hurt. I mean, obviously I support a different team, but Joe Burrow is one of those stars that we need to have on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through X right now, formerly known as Twitter. A lot of videos.
I love calling it X, actually. I do.
I got a text like during the game from my brother's like, ugh, I hate X. This is so stupid. I'm like, yep. And so there's a video of him, his non-contact injury getting carted off. We'll wait and see what happens. You hope that it's not serious, but right in the middle as we're playing this interview with Shaun King, and I'll say this, Andy McNamara, shout out to him for messaging me. He's like, hey, you want Shaun King on the show? I'm like, Shaun King, former quarterback? And I used to be Shaun King all the time in NFL 2K on Dreamcast. So that was pretty cool. And people saying, I don't remember him on the Ticats. According to Wikipedia, he signed with the Ticats in 2007 and was released 18 days later to pursue a career in broadcasting. So he was on ESPN, now on VSiN.
Path to WST started.
Yeah.
18 days after he signed with the Ticats.
So I think he just felt like he was lied to and he had to leave, apparently. So I'd love to hear more about that story or more about his experiences with his 18 days in the CFL.
Yeah, listen, this Joe Burrow injury is taking over the chat. Brad Batters, no, I know. I mean, I would be freaking out too. I can tell you if I heard that same thing about Patrick Mahomes, I would not be able to continue with the show. So we just hope that, it is precautionary or nothing that'll keep him out of the lineup for too long, because he is the Bengals. To be perfectly
Are you
honest.
racing? I know the Chiefs are in the AFC, but are you racing to put on some futures right now? You probably already have them on the Chiefs.
It'd be, well, you know what? This is an interesting. They certainly won't be going on the Bengals, but let's check the Coolbet line.
This is what you do,
Huss.
Huss.
Sort of thing.
You hear an injury and you immediately try to take advantage of some.
Go to the futures. Go to the futures right now.
Okay.
And let's see. AFC.
Where's AFC?
AFC North.
Where the hell is it?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be off the board.
They took it off the board already.
There it is. It's off the board.
It's not
As you
even
can
there.
see. They work fast.
How fast are these guys at Coolbet? They must be trolling X all day for this. Whoa, that's quick, man. That happened like 5 minutes ago.
While we are here right now, they do have all the other division bets right now. Here are your favorites. Bills plus 120 to win the AFC East. New York Jets plus 260 is interesting. The Jags are minus 154 to win the South. Shaun likes the Titans 4-1. Maybe some really good value there. Chiefs minus 154 to win the West. Chargers are next up at plus 350. And then the NFC has the Eagles at minus 105 to win the East. The Detroit Lions, I don't know if in my lifetime the Lions have ever been the favorite in the NFC North, but that is the case by a pretty considerable margin, to be honest. The Saints in the NFC South, which is an ugly, ugly division. And then the NFC West, there's minus 182 for the Niners. And if you like what Shaun was saying about Seattle, plus 250 right there. CFL, we just did the lock shop. We've got a new partner parlay. The games are as follows. Ottawa's minus 1.5 at home to Hamilton. Touchdown Atlantic game. Riders and Argos. Argos are 10.5 point favorites out in the Maritimes. BC 7.5 point favorites Saturday night in Edmonton against the Elks. And Calgary and Montreal. Montreal minus 2.5. We hit our exclusive last week in the lock shop, plus 725. We got a new one that is up right now. Ottawa minus 1.5 against Hamilton. BC minus 7.5 against the Elks. And Calgary plus 2.5 against Montreal, plus 660. Get on it right now over in the Coolbet exclusives.
So Craig Smith, who worked with the Ticats at the time, was Shaun. He says, I don't remember that at all. Remis saga. Never heard that. So I don't know. This is what Shaun King claimed. It was a great story.
He just dropped that at the end. It was a long time ago. Who knows? You'd maybe be the one that could verify it for us, Craig, more than anyone. So let us know. Before we go, I got to give a shout out to T. Conopoli, and I'm gonna talk about this tomorrow more in and around marbles when we always have a big boost of people popping in. But T. Kona also big cash guy like myself. Was having issues with YouTube and Super Chats. Anyways, made a very generous donation for the GoFundMe for Dancing Gabe, as well as another one for Brady Oliveira's dog rescue. So, T. Conopoli, you're the man. We're going to be matching those and doing our own donations. But I'm going to do, we'll put, I just wanted to give T. Conopoli a shout out on that. Tomorrow on the show around marbles, we will drop the GoFundMe link for Gabe and for Brady if you would like to make a donation as well. And thanks again to T. Conopoli for doing just that. What are you going to watch tonight, Remo? I'm sort of lost. No Jays, no CFL game tonight.
There's
and the
other
World Cup doesn't
baseball.
start until like midnight.
There's other baseball. What am I gonna watch? There's a show on Apple TV, the After Party Season 2. Maybe I'll get into that with my wife. We haven't started it.
Oh, maybe I'll watch the quarterback series tonight.
Quarterback
for a good day to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, now I keep seeing the quarterback series on Netflix was so successful, but now they're having trouble getting people for Season 2. It's like Hard Knocks now. They don't want to do it.
Oh, it's Shark Week.
I don't care about Shark Week. Craig Smith says about Shaun King. I was so happy to get him. Was after him for a while. Thought he'd be excellent in the CFL, but it didn't work out. Interesting.
Work out. Yeah, he'd been around. Yeah, he had a nice little run there with the Bucks for a while and was back up on the 03 championship team. So it was fun to have him on the show today. We should get out and get this podcast loaded up. But once again, to everyone that came out last night, it was so much fun seeing you all. We will definitely do it again soon, and we really do appreciate the support. Speaking of support, shout out to all the sponsors and everyone hanging with us today, even on one of the more dead days on the sporting calendar of the entire year. Tomorrow, though, we will have Hacksaw for a little more NFL talk. Scott Billick, Brandon Rewicki as well, and, of course, a marble race to get you ready for the weekend. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow on WST. Thanks so much.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.